century equivalent of the 19th century Industrial Revolution, maybe more so. Give us your sense of the scale of this revolution, where it's taking us, and its implications, particularly for a lot of the people who are here today who are in government.
Well, about 18 months ago, when we began to fully grasp what the people at OpenAI, ChatGPT had achieved, a level of artificial intelligence that would actually advance human thinking. We created neural networks that can answer questions that human brains would struggle with. When we came to grips with that, I made a speech and I said, is artificial intelligence the most important discovery in the history of humankind? And question mark, maybe. We'll soon find out. 18 months later, I think it's very, very clear. It is a much bigger deal than the Industrial Revolution, electricity, everything that's come before. We will soon have not only artificial intelligence, but much sooner than anticipated, artificial general intelligence, and not in too distant future, artificial superintelligence. What is artificial superintelligence? I'll quote my dear friend Elon Musk. Well, Elon said about artificial superintelligence, I'm not looking forward to being a house cat.
I mean,
so we will have incredible reasoning power of the ability to discover things that would elude human minds, because this next generation of AI is going to reason so much faster, discover insights so much faster, whether it's being able to diagnose cancer in early stages, or design therapies, custom design vaccines for those cancers, custom made for your genomics and your specific tumor antigens. So that is one of the things that in medicine, we'll see revolutions in diagnostics and in therapeutics. As you know, Tony, we started a project where we're gathering satellite imagery from Kenya to California, and we can predict crop yields. So we could actually tell a farmer, a country, whether they're going to exceed what they expect from this year's harvest, or they're going to have a shortfall and they need to start preparing that. We can tell individual farmers that a part of their fields need additional irrigation, part of the field needs additional fertilizer. So we can improve yields in individual farms, and then we can do that on a much larger scale, where we can improve yields across countries and even entire regions of the world. I can go on, but AI will fundamentally change our lives in medicine, in agriculture, in robotics, across the board.
I mean, just to give some sense of this and how it applies to government. So obviously in things like healthcare, but I guess also in things like education, also in maybe the type of seeds that farmers will use for their crops. I mean, there's a whole series of innovations, and maybe just because I think people are familiar with the concept of artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, but just give us a sense of what that's going to mean to the development of science.
Well, science, and as science develops, of course, it has incredible economic and social consequences. So you just mentioned a couple of examples. As you know, we are busily trying to design a next generation of rice that grows in saltwater. We are busily trying to design the next generation of maize that fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere, so the maize will not require fertilizer. Fertilizer has a number of problems, one of which certain farmers in certain countries can't afford it. So we'll be able to lower the cost of growing, increase yields by having a whole new generation of seeds for wheat, for corn, for rice, that will really provide food security for the planet, at least for the next few generations.
Right, and when you come to government and what government's doing, there are artificial intelligence tools, and some of them I know that Oracle have developed around financial management for government, but also tell us a bit about because you're right at the forefront of this revolution, what it means for what government should do in terms of its digital infrastructure, digital ID, data centers, and so on.
In other words, if AI is really this great, how do I take advantage of it? Because the impacts are enormous. And it's very interesting because almost no one is talking about that. Everyone is talking about, and I will answer the question in just a second, everyone's talking about these fantastic NVIDIA chips that allow us to build these huge AI models, how the data centers, Oracle's building a 2.2 gigawatt data center that costs between 50 and soon $100 billion to build these data centers and train these models. Because these models are so expensive, you won't build your own, as a rule. There'll be a handful of these models. The question is, how do you take advantage of these incredible AI models? And the first thing a country needs to do is to unify all of their data so it can be consumed and used by the AI model. Everyone talks about the AI model, and they are astonishing. But how do you provide a context? I want to ask questions about my country. What's going on in my country? What's happening to my farmers? I need to give it my climate data. Now, it probably has your climate data already, but I need to know exactly what crops are growing in which farms, and to predict the output. So I have to take satellite images. I have to take those satellite images for my country and feed that into a database that is accessible by the AI model. So I have to tell the AI model as much about my country as I can. You tell part of the story with these satellite models. You give a huge amount of information. You tell it where roads are, where borders are, where your utilities are. So you need to provide a map of your country for the farms and all of the utility infrastructure and your borders. All of that you have to provide. But beyond that, if you want to improve population health, you have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. And in the Middle East, in the UAE, for example, they're incredibly rich in data. They have a lot of population data. The NHS in the UK has an incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform. So we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like.
Yeah, so you've obviously got to have your data in a good form. So it's got to be data that, because what you feed into that model is vital that it's accurate. But then secondly, what you're saying is, with these large language models, you wouldn't try and recreate necessarily your own, because the expense of that, the investment is just vast. But you can adapt it with your own data and then interrogate it for the purposes of government policy, right?
Exactly. So you provide additional training. So these AI models are trained primarily by data that's publicly available on the internet. And there's a lot of climate data that's publicly available on the internet. But most certainly, your national health records aren't available on the internet. That stuff is not available, but that's very precious, very, very precious for your data, for your country, because you're using that data to improve population health and get better outcomes for individual citizens. So all of that data, and right now, countries' data is fragmented. The problem is it's not like go to this database and here's all the data about my country. It's go to this 3,000 databases and here's all the information about my country. So but we know how to do that. You can pipe this data from these 3,000 separate data sources into a single unified database. And that's what we need to do. We need to layer on top of all of this fragmented data that we have about all this information we have about our country. And we need to take that and unify that into a single database. So when we ask questions, the data model has all the information it needs to answer the question, discover the insight, and recommend an action.
So you're really, through the use of this, you're revolutionizing the way government works, right? The services it provides, the way that it operates. What about things like financial management, procurement? How can AI help a government operate more efficiently, more effectively, give a more direct and better service to the citizen?
Well, we have these modern financial systems. So, countries can, and all, so for example, Oracle has this thing called Fusion Financials. And Fusion Financials is chock full of AI agents that help you do a better job, predict what supplier might be late, what supplier, again, might not deliver on time. It helps you put things out for bid if you want to bid things. It knows that certain transactions are confidential. Sometimes military transactions are confidential. It helps you procure things, manage the budget, see what agencies are likely to go over budget. So you can tell early on something in the fourth month if an agency is going to miss their budget, and if necessary, take corrective measures. Just like you can know early on if your farmers, if your agricultural output is going to miss its targets, and you're going to have a crop shortfall, you can take action by futures crops from other areas. The AI system will help you do that. But again, the secret is to get all of that data in one place. Without having the basic data, it cannot answer the question about your country.
I mean, we're here in the UAE, which is really at the forefront of the use of AI in government. One of the things that people often ask from from developing countries, but also developed countries is, well, what's the importance of having that basic digital infrastructure in place? You know, cloud services, data centers, digital identity. How important are these things to put in place so that the rest of the system works effectively?
Well, I think one of the most important things is not to put the digital infrastructure in place and make sure it is secure. And often it needs to be sovereign. So I think countries are very uncomfortable with keeping their data in other countries' data centers. So I think part of our essential infrastructure, just like airports obviously need to be in our country, or they're not terribly useful. Ports need to be in our country, they're not terribly useful. Data centers, because of the privacy requirements around the data, need to be in our countries, or they're not terribly useful. They need to be in our countries, but they also need to be secure. And there are new technologies right now. This is the last year you will ever log on to an Oracle system with a password. Next, by the middle of this year, well, how do I mean, I'm quite certain you are Tony Blair. So how do I know? Well, I look at you, I hear your voice, I listen to the kind of questions you ask. I'm pretty sure you're not synthetically created in having this conversation. The security system, we have biometric logins. The computer recognizes you. It recognizes your voice. It might ask you to put your index finger on the return key. And we're absolutely certain it's you. There's no reason to enter a password. In fact, passwords are too easily stolen. Data centers and data is being taken hostage all over the world. The ransomware business is a very, very good business. It's getting bigger and better every year. We tend not to talk about it because the American FBI has a simple advice to someone whose data has been ransomed. Just pay them because there's nothing we can do about it. But there is something we can do about it, not after the data is stolen. But before the data is stolen, we can make sure that we're using the latest security technology, and it is going to be biometrics assisted by AI to make sure that you are, in fact, Tony Blair, and I'm sure you are.
Yeah, well, there are times I wish I wasn't, by the way, but that's, that's another matter. But Larry, just because we're tight on time, I mean, you've got a lot of people here from government, also from the technology sector. One of the hardest things is to get the people in government to understand just how much in government is going to change, how you might reimagine the way that government functions, and also to get the people with the technology, with the enabling technology, into the right dialogue with them. Okay, because this is a new world, right? How do you keep on top of these developments, and what would your advice be? I mean, you've got a lot of people from governments around the world. What would your advice be to someone in government trying to figure all this out, trying to work out how they make sense of this huge revolution in technology to deliver better services for their citizens? What should be their attitude of mind? And maybe, if you don't mind also, what's the skill set you need to bring into government? Well, I think one of the biggest changes, I can talk about my country and a little bit about the UK as well. The people now expect in a democracy that we provide a high level of service. Government provides a high level of service, where people get very dissatisfied and they vote us out of office. And people, one of the services, the most expensive service we provide typically in our countries is healthcare. Healthcare, and when people expect high quality healthcare, people even talk about healthcare being a human right. We can deliver healthcare at a much lower cost. I mean, not only do we get much better outcomes, but by early diagnosis, better therapeutics, better population health, and we can get all of that as long as countries will put their data, their healthcare data, all of it, in a single place where we can use AI to help manage the care of all of the patients and the population at large. We can deliver a very, very high quality service. But that's also true of a variety of social services, not just healthcare, if we're having supplementary housing. And we can do it, and we can also eliminate all of the fraud. I think one of the most interesting things in the first couple of weeks of the Trump administration, and I think everyone is shocked, and by the way, including Elon and the president and me and everyone, though I don't want to lump myself in that, that's quite a group. I'll just Elon and the president, on the amount of fraud, and the government system's not catching them in our country, in the United States, the vast amount of fraud that's going on in our systems, and we didn't know. No one went, because they're such primitive IT systems. People were able to get Social Security payments up to they're 150 years old. Now, I would love to have lived to be 150 years old, and then I certainly would deserve my Social Security, though some people would argue I don't need it, but I'll take it. But if I live to 150, I'll take it. I would love that. But
we can provide high-quality services, save the government a vast amount of money. Our populations will be healthier. They'll have longer lifespans, and the government will be spending less while getting better outcomes. I think this will make for a happier citizenry and dramatically improve the quality of our lives, of all of our citizens. And I think we just need to, the digital tools we have right now are so primitive that a lot of people have been able to defeat them. Whether it's someone doing, taking over your utility or taking over your hospital and locking you out of all of the hospital data. You need to modernize, seriously modernize your systems. But not only do you need to modernize your systems, again, let's take the UAE in particular, and we looked at the UAE very closely and are talking with people in the UAE about the treasure of data that they have and how they could deliver population health, improve the quality of life, improve the health span of the entire population by using modern technology, preparing their healthcare data, putting it in a single place, and then using these AI models to improve the quality of care.
Well, there's an amazing opportunity to reimagine the state, the way that government functions, and the service that it can provide for its citizens. And Larry, thank you so much for being with us. You've explained in a short period of time, I think, just what the massive opportunity is for governments to utilize technology to change their country and to change the lives of their people. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you.